In training, we are giving them skills that will tell you the price per kilogram of pineapple if you want to buy. Right now, the team is doing a survey. In the next 1 or 2 weeks, we'll be launching that place just as a pilot. That's what we want to do with all of the agricultural commodity markets, so that you walk in there and say, well, I have a kilogram of pawpaw for $10. If you have 10 pounds, that's $100. We want to be clear about that. That can help us to predict with some degree of accuracy the income that farmers will be generating from their activities. The next thing we want to do under the arrest in the agriculture pillar is to promote agro-enterprise development. Most of our actors in the agricultural value chain either lack skill for marketing or they do lack access to finance. So under this component of the arrest, the A, we intend to establish an agricultural enterprise development bank. That bank will be required or will be designated. The purpose of that bank is to create access to finance for those who are in agro businesses. And that access to finance will be backed by skill training in business development. We want to be able to build a capacity, not just to be farmers, but to be entrepreneurs, agricultural entrepreneurs, with clear idea, clearly taught what to do, and then with access to finance. We've been talking with His Excellency has been tuned about this bank, and we are trying to see how we can work with some private sector actors to have this joint venture established. With a joint venture, we want to be able to ensure some level of transparency in this governance, not to repeat what we saw in the past with the Agricultural Cooperative Development Bank. We also want to ensure that we improve access to value chain development technology. This is why, under our National Agriculture Development Plan, we have come up with demarcating the country into production clusters where we establish industries, production units that will be linked with processing units and machinery centers. So in the cluster, you will have an institution there running the machinery center, you have somebody there running the processing plant, somebody there running those farm machines that support production, and the farmer produce the processing and get it on the market. So we're going to be doing those as part of the agenda, the agricultural agenda in the arrest pillar. Finally, we want to do diversification of our food system. We know Liberia produces a lot of things, food commodities. But a typical Liberian, if you don't eat food, you don't eat rice, you are not eating food, right? If a Liberian does not eat rice, even if he ate pineapple, or he ate cassava, or he ate edibles, you ask him, he's not eating. But there is a need for diversification. So we want to support dietary diversification by diversifying what we produce. And we want to actually pilot that with the homegrown school feeding program. And that is working right now. Those in the rural communities, the kids who are going to school there, they actually understand you don't need to eat rice every day. Because the school encourages them to eat cassava, through gari. They eat only twice a day, twice a week, rice, twice a week in the homegrown school feeding program. You eat rice twice a week. And you eat other commodities 3 times a week. What we try to do would be to support the institutions that are running the homegrown school feeding program. The Education Minister and I had that conversation. If we start changing the diet of our children in the schools, they will grow up knowing options, not just rice. That's the essence. So that concludes the agriculture or A in the arrest agenda. We have an elaborate plan that will be presented to this body for consideration that will provide detail of the plan we have for improving the agriculture sector. Now we come to ROAR. ROAR is the critical one that supports all other pillars within the platform and also in the arrest agenda. So when this platform was being formulated, or the agenda was formulated, what we tried to do was to reinforce appropriate investment in roads and bridges to expand access across the country. And I was on my way to Lofa, I was very happy. I tried to call the Minister of Public Works to tell him thank you for the work he's done there, but I couldn't get him. I went to Lofa in June of 2022, when not 2022, but 2023, when we had a caterpillar infestation. To leave Salaye to Vanjama, it was a challenge. But you can actually drive from Monrovia to Zozo on clean road. Between Zozo and Salaye, the road is clear. It's not paved yet, but it's clear. You can drive there. The only challenge we had was between Konya and Vanjama. I told to appreciate the Minister of Public Works for that great job. And surprisingly, from Foya to Vanjama, the road is actually accessible. And what some of the community, I was very surprised to see the great job he's doing that. So thank you, Mr. Minister. The second thing we want to do is to ensure proper management of the National Road Fund to achieve its legislative mandate. The road fund was established to collect money through the sale of petroleum and other things to support infrastructure development in the road sector. But we see that at a certain time there have been issues with implementing the mandate of the fund. So under the address agenda, we want to ensure that funds generated from the road fund is used for the intended purpose. That's what we want to do under this agenda. And then we also want to continue the pavement of highway connecting county capitals to create easy access to regions of the country. I know the Ministry of Public Works and Agriculture are working together. We want to be able to drive on quota from Monrovia to Israel to Harper, to Cape Palmer. And that plan is working well. Again, I was in Nema just yesterday. I went to Tapeta. Before Tapeta was not anywhere you could go within a day. It required hours. But it took me, I think, 2.5 hours to travel from Ganta to go to Tapeta. Driving. So, at the end of the day, the vision is Tapeta to Grand Chile to Harper should be in quota, and that work is ongoing. The country is committed to that. His Excellency will realize that because the money is going to be realized. We also want to have paved highways connecting the country to neighboring countries. And we know, the Minister of Public Works told me he has plans for the western part to get a fair share of what the government intends to do. We also want to strengthen integrity institutions to guarantee accountability in public services. And that's where our anti-corruption institutions come in. And the President has always spoken about integrity. We want to ensure that integrity becomes a hallmark of what we do. That's why integrity and the rule of law become cross-cutting to all of the pillars we have on our agenda, or on the arrest agenda. We want to strengthen election governance to guarantee transparency and integrity in electoral processes. We are a democratic nation. We want to make sure that there is transparency. We want to promote peace and reconciliation to create and maintain a harmonious society. All of the plans we have for developing, whatever investment we make, if the community is not reconciled, there's no unity, we are wasting our resources. So as part of this government agenda, we intend to ensure that there is genuine and true reconciliation amongst our people, and our community are united to contribute to the development of this country. So those who are in that field or operate guarding the sector, please look at the platform. There are specific points that we suggested in there based on consensus to be done to ensure our people are reconciled. We want to engage the national legislature with a well-defined legislative agenda. And I know the legal advisor to the President will speak on some of those actions that they plan to take that will lead to a coordination between the legislative and executive branches of government. We look at education. Under the education in the arrest agenda, the E, we want to improve educational system and governance. I know the Minister of Education, after her tour, she and I talked, and she understands some of the lapses in the governance processes, and she has committed herself to ensuring that the governance system in our education structure or sector is strengthened, and the right things are done to ensure we have a better system. We also intend to strengthen early childhood education. Because one of the weaknesses we're seeing in the sector before this government came up was the early childhood education has not been given the priority that it desired. Because we always say if you're building a skyscraper, the foundation matters. And in the education sector, early childhood education is the foundation. If you lay it better, you have a better system going on. But the Minister of Education, besides strengthening early childhood, we also want to make sure that our primary education system is improved. We want to strengthen it. We want to be able to strengthen our educational outcome, especially at the secondary level. We realize that some of our high school graduates today wouldn't write you a letter. So even if we make investment in education, if the outcome does not commensurate the investment, then we're wasting resources. We want to make sure the Ministry of Education does everything to improve the outcome of the system, especially secondary. We want to strengthen and improve the quality of tertiary education. And we say the foundation from early childhood, primary, secondary, and then go to tertiary. What you produce at the tertiary level is as a result of the investment you make in the primary and secondary education. So we want to make sure that our tertiary education is not just where you go to get papers, but you go there to get skills also. That will be productive skills that will lead to involvement in economic activities that adds dividend to the country's development. We want to diversify and promote technical and vocational training education. So the president always says this. Our young people are all around. Some of them will actually be repairing the keke and the motorcycles that we have around here. That's not just building skills, but creating job opportunities for them. So the president has been very specific about creating vocational technical institutions. Places like BWI, making it a technical institution that will be able to innovate and bring small farm machine. That's where I am, small farm machine, right? You produce the power tiller or even the smaller machine that you can develop for harvesting. So we can only do that when our vocational and technical institutions are strengthened to be able to bring the level of innovation that is needed to develop those institutions. So technical education is one of the key areas. Those of our partners are already supporting that on the TVET projects. We encourage them to work with the government to identify our needs so that we can continue to do that. The next is sanitation. A partner over there always says, we did not consider health. But in the broader pillar, we said health and sanitation. Because we wanted to be the way we are, we took sanitation. But we also brought in the health activities of sanitation. So, I lost mine. So, for sanitation, we thought to improve primary health care delivery. That's one of the key areas. We also want to ensure that along the way, all of our, if I don't say it well, then my partner will say, and I didn't do it in the platform, in the arrangement general, I didn't say it, I will say it. So what we want to do is to improve wash services in Liberia and ensure healthy environment. And one of the things that the president said when we were discussing this was, you see, we want to be able to have our inspectors going around to see the communities, sanitary inspectors. You got communities, people put garbages where they shouldn't be. And in the past, we had these health inspectors going around to check the communities. If the community is dirty, they will tell you what to do or something. They impose fines on people. We want to see that happening again. We want to improve water and sanitation service delivery in our rural communities. We don't want to have our rural people stay drinking from the creek. We want to use the sanitation pillar of the arrest agenda to ensure access to pure, safe, and clean drinking water in the rural community. That's what we want to do on that. We also want to develop and maintain a healthy environment. Health, sanitation, health, the wash, and the environmental people are along that side. We want to ensure the availability of medicine and medical supplies to enhance effective healthcare delivery. I know our Minister of Health will do some presentation in this line. Healthcare delivery starts with making available the appropriate medication. But in some of the hospitals, you go there, they prescribe for you and tell you to go to the pharmacy to go and find it. We think we should have it there because we trust the one they have at the health services, the pharmacy and the healthcare delivery system. We want to ensure a patient-centered health workforce. Most of the complaint, before we wrote this thing, there were other studies we did as committee, platform committee. Some of the things that we heard was some of the nurses in the healthcare services or delivery system do not understand customer service. They talk to you as a patient as if you were nothing. So the Minister of Health has the responsibility to implement this part of it, to ensure that you go to a hospital, you must be able to be patients or nurses or medical practitioners who will treat you as human. Not because you are a patient, but you are also a human. We need to have that decency, so the Minister of Health will be looking at that. The final one is tourism. And tourism is one of the areas we have great potential in this country, where it remains untapped. So the President was very specific about it and said, if you want to create jobs for the young people, you have to improve the tourism sector. In fact, we know the Lepiso in Grand Cape County is one of the areas that is more attractive in this country, but we are not utilizing it. So the President, when they developing this, was his vision is to designate Grand Cape County as a tourism center. Some may not know the potential of that place. Right now, I think Liberia should be hosting international surfing competition, right? The pistol, if we develop the infrastructure along that area, in Grand Cape, you can actually drive and go fishing around the day. Tourism, you pay some money for that. We can generate some income from that. People will come over. But to do that, he also said we should be able to establish the National Tourism and Culture Authority. That tourism authority will be responsible now to design the program and other things. And I know the legal advisor will speak about that. I think there have been some work on driving legislation that supports that. We also want to strengthen collaboration between the National Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. There are tourism sites across, there are cultural sites and heritage across the country that we need to develop for people to go and see. One time I went to Grand Cape County, I think that was 2004. I understand there is something in Grand Cape, a hanging garden somewhere. I don't know that place. But they talked with me about it and I really wish to go and see it. There are shrines across the country that people can actually go and see to appreciate our own traditional and cultural heritage. So if we collaborate with the Minister of Internal Affairs, we are able to identify those areas and make them cultural heritage sites for people to go and see and pay some money to see it. We want to also ensure collaboration between the 15 counties so that we develop their tourism site or the cultural sites for tourism purposes. We want to be able to develop the needed infrastructure that create access to this area. We still talk about Grand Cape County. If you wanted to go to Lepiso, you leave the main road to go there, you will spend a bit of time because the road is not good. If that road is accessible, some of you can drive during the weekends to just go there and see beautiful sceneries and do some fishing and eat some fresh fish. is there. So that's what tourism wants to achieve, and that's what the arrest agenda intends to achieve on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nuta, for splendidly explaining the President's
good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
arrest
folks,
agenda.
wherever you find yourself.
Another round of applause for Dr. Nuta.
This is Focus on Liberia, and my name is Gwendolyn Dorado Bolton. We are at
when the President
Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Ministerial Complex, where the government of Liberia is hosting a 3-day cabinet retreat and coordination and performance of the arrest agenda in Liberia. And we have had many speakers here, and the program is going on. So welcome. Let's take and stay together.
To the legislature, and they are working on them to pass. Those 3 legislations will have critical impact on the way the country moves forward in the next 6 years. With that, I will now ask Councillor Bishop Keita, the legal advisor to the President, to present the President's legislative agenda.
This is way from far across the continents. Podium where you give the President's legislative agenda. This is
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of the Cabinet, government officials, and our guests. I'm going to do a presentation on President Boakai's legislative agenda. One of the functions of the Office of Legal Advisor is to assist in passing legislation that the President desires. And so we have a setup and a system for proposing new legislation. I will also try to explain that to you, especially heads of ministries and agencies and commissions who are interested in amending legislation or in proposing new legislation. The President's legislative agenda is taken from the President's public remarks that he has made in speeches and instructions that he has also given to us. Next slide, please. One of the sources of the President's legislative agenda is the State of the Nation's Address of January 29, 2024. We also got the inaugural address as another source. Like I said, we get these agenda items directly from what the President has said. We clear them up with him, and then they are proposed. Next slide, please. So this is how the President legislative agenda looks for the year 2024. I must say also that some ministries and agencies have come forward with requests for amendment to the existing legislation, and those are also being taken under consideration. But for the time being, we have the promulgation and adoption of the National Law Reform Policy, review of all anti-corruption laws, review of the National Code of Conduct Act, review of the Local Government Act, enactment of a transitional act to govern the conduct of government after the holding of general and presidential elections, review the act establishing the Ministry of Information, Culture, and Tourism to make tourism an autonomous commission, review of the Financial Institution Act and Liberia Insurance Regulatory Commission Act. Next. Three of these bills have already been submitted to the national legislature within the first 100 days. Those are the presidential transition bill. We've always had a problem with what happens after 6 years when we have an election, and we did not have a clearly defined law as to how the outgoing government should act and how the incoming government should act. And so we have been operating by executive order. This bill wants to legislate that process so that we don't have any confusion about what are the obligations of the outgoing government and the incoming government. And this act has already been presented to the national legislature. The second bill that has been presented is the bill for the establishment of the Ministry of Local Government. Currently, we have Ministry of Internal Affairs, but there's a new Local Government Act, and there has been a lot of structural changes that doesn't exactly fit with the Ministry of Internal Affairs is. You will notice that when the president was making appointments to local government positions, that the titles of those positions have changed, because we were trying our best to be in conformity with the new law. And so with the passage of this act, there will no longer be Ministry of Internal Affairs. In fact, it's going to be changed to Ministry of Local Government. We have also submitted to the legislature a national tourism bill. The president's vision is that the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs, and Tourism as it exists today will be split. The Ministry of Information will become a stand-alone ministry, and there's going to be a National Tourism Authority that will be also a stand-alone agency of government, an authority with full functions that will be responsible for all of our tourism matters and the promotion of our culture. In the previous presentation, you were told that in the arrest agenda, the T there stands for tourism, and to emphasize the need to have a strong stand on tourism, there's going to be a stand-alone National Tourism Agency. This bill has also been submitted to the national legislature and is in process. Then we have had a lot of misunderstanding about how do we reform and transform our laws. What is the procedure for changing laws? And it's kind of here, there, and yonder. We will propose to the legislature the adoption of a policy. It's going to be a cabinet level adoption, and then it's going to govern the entire executive branch of government, and then we will legislate it into law so that going forward we know the system by which laws are reformed and changed. We are also looking at an amendment to the new Financial Institution Act to make it more current with modern financial transactions that are taking place and international best practices. We have a lot of focus now on revenue generation and on financial standards of managing government finances. So since the PFR, the Public Finance Management Act, we have not had any other significant change in that area. Number 6, then the Payment System Act amended and stated this one refers to control over these money transfer agencies that we have in Liberia. There's a proliferation. Almost everybody now has some way of transferring money from one part of the country or from one person to the other, and these things need to be regulated. And the government has to find a way to get some revenue in between these transactions that are happening. And so the law has to be changed. It has to be brought up to standard so that we know how we track these systems and the transactions that are taking place, and also for security reasons and money laundering elimination. We are also going to review our anti-corruption laws to strengthen them, laws that affect our integrity institutions and how they behave, because it's part of the president's legislative agenda, it's part of the president's entire agenda on the rule of law aspect that integrity should be brought back to government. We're also going to be looking at the Code of Conduct Act. The Code of Conduct Act of 2014, we want to know whether it's working and whether we need to revisit some aspects of it. For example, it says if you want to run for public office, you have to resign at least 2 years before the election. So, for example, elections will be in 2029, you have to resign by 2027. But we know that during the last election, that did not happen. So we had an executive order amending the law to allow for a shorter period for those who were resigning to go and run for office. We need to know what is it that we want, how we want the Code of Conduct Act to look. We also want to see whether it governs the behavior of public officials. And so we want to look into that and see how that can be transformed as part of the president's legislative agenda. Next slide. Okay, so these are all the same things I was talking about in the 3 acts that we have already submitted that fell within the president's 100 days deliverables. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, go back, please go back one slide. What has the president done so far in the area of legislation? Number 1, there was an act to authorize the government to spend $41.3 million. Because the budget was not passed by the time that the new government took office, and because we had to run the government, we had a supplementary bill authorizing the executive branch of government to spend up to $41.3 million to stabilize after our transition period. The president signed that bill into law. The next one that the president signed is the joint resolution number 1 from the Senate and the House of Representatives on the mechanism for the establishment of an extraordinary criminal court and a domestic corruption code for war and economic crimes. And so we want to clarify to you what that says. Because a lot of people say war and economic crimes code. The resolution that was sent to the president by the legislature did not say war and economic crimes code. It said a domestic code for economic crimes and a special code for war crimes. So it is only the war crimes that is going to be under international law. And for the economic crime, it's going to be a domestic code. And so this resolution sent to the president, and the president signed it and returned it signed to the legislature. What does that mean? The president went a step further to issue Executive Order number 131, setting up the Office of War Crimes Code. The Office of War Crimes Code is not the code itself. It is the office that will work out the modalities for the War Crime Code. So, what's the next step in our process? The executive branch of government is going to decide on the structure of this office. It's going to be headed by an executive director and then supported by other people. And they will begin work on how we want the War Crimes Code to look. What is the jurisdiction? Where is this going to be located? Who are going to be the judges? And how is this code going to be funded? They have a 6-month mandate from the time that they are set up according to the executive order. So we are in the process right now of structuring the Office of War Crime Court. When we do that, the president will appoint people to these positions. And the issue of financing for this entire operation also needs to be resolved because it can be expensive for the examples that we have seen from other countries. So right now, the executive order has been signed into law and we are on course for the special criminal code that will be set up for war crimes. The president also signed the 2024 budget. The president also signed the 2024 budget into law. But this time he signed it with a caveat. And this is probably the first time in the history of our country that the president issued a caveat to the budget. Simple. The president submitted a budget of about $693 million, and the legislature sent to the president a budget for about $738 million. So that was a $46.5 million increase over the president's budget. But the president has signed that budget into law. The purpose of the caveat is to say if we find this extra $46 million that the legislature has included in the budget, we will implement the law. However, it is contingent. However, it is contingent on us being able to find it. So the Ministry of Finance has been directed by the president to treat the extra $46 million as contingent in the implementation of this year's budget. The president has also signed into law an act to amend Part 3, Chapter 10 of the Revenue Code of 2000 to provide for value-added tax replacing goods and services tax. And it's good that members of the cabinet and officials of government here understand that we are doing away with GST as you know it, and we are going to be using VAT, which is the value-added tax, which is common practice that has been used in other countries around and successfully. So you will see going forward VAT, meaning value-added tax. This already been signed into law. The people from our people from the Liberia Revenue Authority and the Ministry of Finance are working closely now to effect this, to bring it into full effect. Those are the acts so far that the president has already approved of and signed. There have been, of course, several executive orders that the president has also signed, and those executive orders can be found on our Executive Mansion website. I encourage everybody, all the government officials here, present members of the cabinet, to visit the Executive Mansion website as often as you can so that you are kept abreast of the developments that are taking place. It's not every day that we have a forum like this where we'll be able to explain. But if you do that, then you will follow the developments that are taking place from the executive branch of government. Before I take my seat, I want to make one or two clarifications. On matters that require presidential approval for ministries, agencies, and commissions, if you are executing your core functions, executing your budget, you may go ahead and do that. However, if you want to make a policy change, if you want to change something and make it different from how it has been, you will need presidential approval. Do not assume that you can make the change on your own because of your position. It is better to bring it to the president's attention, and then the president will give you the go-ahead to do it. Because sometimes also these things are of the magnitude such that they will be brought before the full cabinet before they are passed upon. So I want to make that clarification to you. I also want to say, if you want to amend your law or any act affecting your functions, whether it's Ministry of Mines or it's Ministry of Transport or anywhere, you have to submit that proposal to the president. It is the president that approves it. Ministries, agencies, and commissions do not directly send law to the legislature. You are part of the executive branch of government. When you submit it and the president approves of it, it is the president's office that sends it to the legislature. There is a process for that. So if you are thinking about amending something, changing something, some policy that you think is good for the country, you start by sending it to the president. The president's office works with the Law Reform Commission. We work with them. These things have to go through the Law Reform Commission to be put in the proper legal form and the proper legal language. If it is approved by the president, then it comes back to the president's office for review and transmission to the legislature. And that is the process I want all of you to follow, please, because it's a legal process. If you're interested in it, like this value-added tax that we're talking about right now, you bring it to the president's office, it is approved, it is sent to the legislature, they approve it, the president signs it into law. The other thing is with actors in the executive branch of government who receive letter from the president and then are continuing to ask questions about it. Letters signed by the president, and if you are in the executive branch of government, so far as you are concerned, is by authority of the president. You must respect it. If you have a problem with it, you have to go back to the president. You have to go back to the president. But you cannot engage in argument with the letter holder. You cannot question the authority of the president by questioning the holder of the letter. You can go to the president, and the president, if he wants to, can withdraw the letter. But so long as the person has a letter signed by the president, he has full authority. I'm saying this to all of us across the board because sometimes it gets people in trouble. It gets people in trouble. And so we are all part of the executive branch of government that's headed by the president, and the president's authority extends to all of us. Also, before I take my seat, I want to clarify people in government who say, I can't work with this person. The president makes an appointment and you say you cannot work with the person. So, I also want to clarify, you cannot say that you don't have that authority. If you think that the appointment doesn't fit your structure, you will go back to the president. Mr. President, I cannot have a meeting with you. Mr. President, the person that you sent to me are having difficulty working with the person. Can you withdraw the person or transfer the person or do something? But to say that the person that the president sent to you doesn't satisfy your requirements, therefore you will not work with the person. You will ostracize the person, you put them in one corner and forget about them. It's working counter. Reports like these have been coming to us. Reports like these have been coming to us about these kinds of situations. So let's look at that. Let's also look at the civil service standing order. The head of the civil service will, for example, say you cannot change people around during this period. And then he will say, okay, you can go ahead now, change people around. These things are related to budgeting, they are related to the transition process and other things that we're going through. So if we have these kinds of restrictions, we should respect it in the period. We have to be, like we say in our ARREST. The second R is for rule of law. So we have to be the rule of law government. And that's what the president's agenda is. So all of us should be trying then to help the president to fulfill his needed agenda and to create a stable and strong government where there is rule of law. I will start with that presentation at this stage because the rest of it involves costing and other things that don't necessarily have to share. The President, Mr. Vice President, distinguished members of the Cabinet, honorable officials here present, I thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keita. Before we continue,
that was Councillor Keita, a legal advisor to the President, giving us an update. Well, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia, and we are at the Elliot Johnson Ministerial Complex here, where the government of Liberia is hosting a 3-day cabinet retreat with theme coordination and performance. My name is Gwendolyn Dorado.
And interact with the presenters.
Let's have a great time together.
On the topics that are being presented. And Mr. Stam Steve Puya, who is the Minister of State without portfolio for special services, will monitor this aspect.
Thank you very much, DJ. Well, good afternoon. So, before we get started, protocol wants me to just announce that the restrooms are to your left, left and right, if you're facing this way behind you. And for the VIP, I think there are bathrooms at the back of the stage. So, we've all listened attentively. I saw several of you taking copious notes. Now is the time for your participation. Perhaps there was something in the arrest agenda that you didn't quite understand, or that you had a point to make. This is the time to do so. Or maybe you are like my sister Florence from National Housing Authority, and you say, what does this have to do with Housing Authority, or maybe Massaquoi? They don't hear a Bureau of State Enterprises. How do we fit in? This is your time to ask those questions. And maybe it's a question to our last speaker. You say, Councillor Keita, but even though the President appointed someone, I got issues with this, can you elaborate a little bit further? I wasn't consulted. So this is your time to take to the microphone and let's interact together. I will moderate. I will be the one to recognize you. Sometimes I will see your hand, and maybe for other reasons I tend to get blind at times, so I may not see some hands. All right? So raise your hand by just simple ground rules. If you have a question, we'll give you 30 seconds to ask your question. If you have a comment to make, just so we only have 25 minutes for this. So if you have a comment, we'll give you a minute to make the comment and make sure it's directly related. Of course, to the chair of the cabinet and the Vice President and my cabinet colleagues, their exceptions, they can respond to those points or acts within as much time as they want. So, having said that, first hand, and by the way, raise your hand and Annie will come to you with the microphone. All right, so. Okay, we want to say thank you to members of the Fourth Estate. At this time, we ask you to please excuse us. Thank you very much for keeping our people informed. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, so while the press is leaving, Annie, the first hand I saw is way out there. Okay, we have 2 microphones. George has one. But please wait until the press leaves. Press. Thank you.
Focus Liberia, we say thanks for viewing. We asked to leave because this one is so private. So thanks for viewing. My name is Gwendolyn Dorado.
Please remember to take your equipment with you. Because I'm able to